The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George. George.
No, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm there yet.
Come on, buddy. We're going to do an episode about a game. Come on.
Okay. We played Gauntlet.
We did play Gauntlet. The original, but not the original. It's a port of the original on the Nintendo.
If I remember correctly, the original was a piece of metal that you wore on your hand, and right?
That's right.
So
yes.
Not that one.
Not that one. In fact, and if we really want to permanently date this episode, not the Infinity Gauntlet, which no one's going to care about in 6 months, even though they're pretending it's the biggest movie ever made.
But yeah, no, we played the NES version of it, which was it was a thing. So what was your relationship to this thing?
So, why do you bother with podcasting when you are clearly meant to be a writer?
Dude, I am a smither of words.
a Smithsonian of words. So this is one of those games that I have super clear memories of playing it and not of the surrounding context, which led me to like kind of Sherlocking how I must have played this game. So I am highly confident that I did not own this game, and I am highly confident that I did not rent this game. So that means I played it at a friend's house. So then that sends me down the list of like, well, it definitely wasn't this friend because this sort of thing was super not their jam. And it was definitely not this friend because they only had a Genesis and this was a Nintendo game, right? It was like trying to, find the statue in the marble by chiseling away everything that was not the statue. So I couldn't arrive at a definitive answer, but I'm fairly sure that it was my cousin that had this, because one of my second cousins, really, one of my cousins had a pretty robust classic game collection because they were quite a bit older than me. So I'm going to say I played this with my cousin Stacy.
Neat. You see, that's what you get for having an extended family, man. Because like, if somebody said you played this with your family members, I was like, I did not.
I did no such thing.
Stick to your foul lies. If I did and I played it with like my father or nope, that's about
you make it sound like either something horribly tragic happened to your extended family or you were grown in a vat.
I'm not actually legally allowed to go into that in detail. You remember though? I can throw out one hint. Okay. Remember the character Envy from Full Metal Brotherhood?
I do.
Anyway. So no, my nostalgia experience for this was honestly, I'm kind of in the same boat, which is I don't remember this game was the opposite of another game that we played where I plugged it in and I was just kind of like, oh yeah, I played this a little bit. Oh my God, I played this forever. This was the opposite where I was like, yeah, no, I Gauntlet, man. It's classic. Obviously I played it a lot. I plugged in. I was like, I did not play this as much as I remember playing it. And honestly, I think it's just because some of the visuals are so distinct, but I think mostly it's the gameplay is so obvious. I mean, it's D&D,
Oh, yeah.
like the aesthetic is Dungeons and Dragons. So I think just the amount that I play Dungeons and Dragons now, I just proportionally increase the amount I played this game in my mind, and that's not true at all. So
it's all D&D related media just gets a boost.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it's kind of like, when people started going nuts about Lord of the Rings, and I was just kind of like, oh yeah, like Lord of the Rings. So I went back and like read one of the books, and I was just kind of like, well, it's just D&D, man. It's his old hat. Like, this has been done, and then people are like, well, no, he did it first. I was like, okay, so that makes sense. And then like later on, people are like, oh, so you're a big fan of Lord of the Rings? I'm like, oh yeah, dude, I'm a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. Well, actually, I've never read the books, and I've only seen the movies like once. But I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. That's like similar.
But I have this other
right?
super nerdy thing you can possibly take my lunch money over if that's your thing. No, an aside already. Lord of the Rings is one of the few book adaptation phenomena that was so successful that if you just say, well, I never read the books, but I really love the movies, there's a good chance that the person on the receiving end of that comment would go, oh no, I've never read the books. I also just really love the movies, right? Like it's not like the Harry Potter purists who are like, oh, you've never read the books. What's wrong with you? Can't you read? But like
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings does not suffer that. Most people are like, yeah, I got halfway into the first book and there were a lot of songs, so I stopped.
Well, and also too, another thing that you can always just say to kind of weed people out is when they're just going like, "Oh, you into Lord of the Rings?" You're like, "Oh yeah, I enjoyed it. I watched the movies. I mean, I never read like the Silmarillion or anything." And if you just throw that out there, that like precludes further talk about because you haven't said that you also haven't read any of the base books.
Yeah.
But it does it implies a level of knowledge that you don't really actually have.
Yeah, no, that is hardcore a lie through indirection or through misdirection
absolutely.
because it's just like, look over there where something unrelated will distract you from the task at hand.
But yeah, so that was my experience. But yeah, speaking of visuals, this game definitely had visuals.
Okay, so this is like a lot of early NES games, maybe even most early NES games, if we ever checked the ratio on that. It was an arcade port. It was also an Atari game, right? This game was literally made by Atari. And that's not a good or bad thing, but as we will discuss in the visuals, and then very much I have thoughts about the mechanics.
Oh yes.
It's very, Atari style graphics. Very lots of solid color. Atari was never big on like dark outlines or anything like that, so there's not cartoony style outlines, like things they were going for a cover of a Forgotten Realms or a the Monster Manual style of artwork, right? Very fantasy, fantastical. And for the time it looks actually pretty good, right? Like there's a bunch of different enemy types, the different tile types and tokens, even though there's a very clear, extremely clear grid, like you're looking at a board game map. It's still like, it's varied. The colors are good. There was only a couple times where I felt like I was kind of lost in like, there wasn't enough differentiation in the colors. Like things usually popped enough. And the fact that you are always dead center in the screen helped. Because I was like, oh, there I am right in the middle where I always am. And the world kind of moves around you. Like only when you're near the extreme edges does the map appear to kind of stay still. There's, like they're good. Like I feel like I'm trying to grasp at straws here, but I'm not. Like they're actually pretty pleasant.
Yeah, no, I think that they set out what they need to do. So as far as visuals for the sake of visuals, yeah, I mean, I thought that they were definitely serviceable, especially considering what it was that they were trying to do. I thought that they did a good thing that we've talked about a number of times on the show, which is they do a good job leveraging the time that they have when you are in like a character select screen. Like I guess the difference would be for modern day would be the difference between like pre-rendered cutscene versus gameplay, So for example, on the character select screen, they take the time to have like these like awesome kind of looking character models. And then when it comes time to do the gameplay, it's just this very simplified top-down token, as you've coined, view, right? But you naturally then you have, if all you had was a token view, it would just be like, oh, well, I'm the warrior token, whatever. But because they gave you a picture, you now have something to like visually place on that, and it gives you enough negative space to do that. So I think that as far as visuals for the sake of visuals, they did that very well. One, not an exception, because I mean, as far as, again, like the visuals were very nice. Yeah, no, this is an exception. So can we talk about the Valkyrie's clothing? Do we want to?
Oh, I mean,
talk about that?
We had this exact same complaint when we talked about Golden Axe, and if we ever play another game from this era or from a person who is of this era, there's a good chance they're going to be in. Oh God, it's like a chainkini or
Yeah.
bi-
I don't like that there's a word for it.
bikini plate. No, there's absolutely a word for this. Like, yeah, there's totally a term for like the obviously drawn by a 15-year-old boy style, like girl armor.
Right.
Armor.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Metal undergarments.
yeah. I don't want to. I am in no way excusing them by saying like, well, it was a different era, because it's not like it was 200 years ago. It was 20 years ago.
And worse though is and kind of the brief, and I'll put my soapbox away. What is that? I wish that we could say that this is a product of a different era, but we still run into it today, and that's kind of about less so like less so by virtue of the fact that we have counterexamples. Before, like, that was the thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's not
like,
it's not that no improvement has happened, but it sure does not seem like enough. And
no, I still shouldn't be able to, take a bunch of games, throw them up in the air, let them all hit the ground, and be like, and then randomly point and have a greater than 60% chance of pointing to this problem. All that being said,
I think the word is actually boob plate. Well, there's a specific reason, because real plate mail armor, if it wrapped around your breasts like that, would actually make your breasts a weak spot, because that shape is not very structural. Whereas real plate mail armor comes to like a small kind of point in the front, which makes it super sturdy and directs force away from your torso, where all your organs and life is. So I think boob plate is the derisive name for that kind of style of art.
Yeah, huge bummer on that one.
Yeah, super bummer.
But yeah, so I did notice that, and I kind of wrote down a note of like, yeah, this is, like I said, like I look forward to the time when hopefully our children can like kind of look at that and be like, oh yeah, that was this ridiculous thing that is non-existent nowadays, as opposed to that's this ridiculous thing that used to be ubiquitous and now is no longer ubiquitous, but is
this exactly like Golden Axe, and exactly like 1,000 other pulp novels and comic books and movies and other things from this time. The guy is obviously Conan the Barbarian, right? Like loincloth, super jacked, otherwise naked for no discernible reason. Like, and that's a powerful stereotype. So like, I get why that one is not derided the same way, but in terms of like the rendering and stuff, like that's all solid. And I think you make a really good point about the like projection from the character select screen. Like, if you don't do it there, it's not going to happen anywhere else in the game. So it's like, this is what this wizard looks like. Now here's a white circle that's his long hair and a blue line for a robe, right? Like now,
dots for eyes.
Yeah. Remember you don't even see the eyes because top down. It's like, remember what the wizard looked like, because that's the last time you're going to see him. Yeah.
And I think that's, like you said, like an important thing to do. One other thing for visuals, for the sake of visuals, is just and another thing like that, again, all of this is products of the era, but the whole thing is like, well, does it hold up? Is the seizure inducing title screen, that color roll that it does for Gauntlet, the word Gauntlet?
Well, I mean, computationally that was probably a really neat effect at the time.
Oh yeah, definitely. But again, it's just, and we've seen a lot of older games that do this. So, definitely not like it's like, oh, this game is the worst for doing it. But just another thing that I feel the need to call attention to is where it's like games have, again, relatively recently been a lot more focused on or about that type of thing where it's like, this can cause seizures, so we shouldn't use this effect for funsies. Like, I think Legend of Zelda 2 was
the death animation.
Screen, where it was just kind of like, dude, I don't have epilepsy and I feel like I'm about to have a seizure. And this was not that. This was way toned down by comparison. But like, I saw that thing scrolling and my brain just said, like, you don't need this much overwhelming sensory information. And again, it's just, like nobody really thought about it until, I think until Pokemon, and then people started seizing left and right. And then
it was Pikachu's little cheek things like flashed constantly. And the thing is, we were less aware of this with modern gaming, but I guarantee you, that Gauntlet splash screen with the scrolling color, like some designer or developer or artist, or honestly at this time in history, probably one person who did all those jobs was like, oh man, this is going to be awesome because it's going to show off the beautiful rendering we can do on the Nintendo Entertainment System hardware, and it's going to blow people's minds because they're going to be used to seeing that stuff on an arcade cabinet, but they're going to see this beautiful color animation on their home console, and it's going to be awesome. And I totally get that, because 20, 30, 40 years from now, when people play games that were made in the 2000s, they're going to be like, why are there so many close-ups on friggin' eyebrows and knuckles? Like, why am I looking at everybody's eyebrows and knuckles? And people in our generation are going to be like, well, I mean, it was really hard to render realistic eyebrows at that time in history, and the animators wanted you to see their hyper-realistic eyebrows, right? And it's going to sound just as stupid then, when hyper-realistic eyebrows are a foregone conclusion, as it does for us to be like, yes, we get it. There are colors. Your game has colors. Thank you.
Yes. Duly noted. Or I think another great example would be, both original Ocarina of Time and Final Fantasy VII, where it's just kind of like, there are 3 dimensions. Whoa! And now you go back and you look at that and you're like, why were these like cutscenes or whatever, like so focused on? This is not. It's like, well, because it was 3D, so that was all you needed, was that one extra dimension, and that was it.
Totally. And I have become hypersensitive to camera shots in movies that are obviously only there because that movie was released in 3D. I'm like, oh, look at the awkward way the camera just swept through this crowd. That looks incredibly stupid and pointless, but I'll bet if I had 3D glasses on, it would have felt stupid, except I'd have glasses on. And
you'd have a headache, but it would look...
I'm luckily not one of those people. Very, very fortunately. But this is it. If you're aware of it when it's happening, then it's a little easier to deal with it over time. But the graphics in Gauntlet are very of their time, and there's a lot of good that comes with that, because Atari made some good decisions about like not hyper outlining everything because they had such small sprites to work with, and not relying too much on the player sort of memorizing where they were on the screen, right? Like there's usually pretty good color contrast, and the camera works well so that you know where you are. Like there's pretty good decisions made there that help these graphics age well. But personally, I prefer the early Nintendo, Sega style of like console specific graphics. The Atari style and earlier arcade style, it just never appealed to me. So I've always felt like these didn't age as well, but I know that that's very much like, it's just my personal taste.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, and overall, I think, like you said, I think that visuals for the sake of gameplay, everything that you listed, I think is an exemplar for, yes, those I think, again, with what little they had to work with, I think they did a very, very good job with that. The one other note that I have for visuals, for the sake of visuals, was because, it's, and again, like we like to have fun here. Overall, I think with what they had to work with, I think that they did a good job, but it's just fun to poke fun at. It's, for me, it's fun to poke fun at some of the things that, like you said, were just ubiquitous at the time. And it's just kind of like, yeah, it should probably still get mentioned. But one of the ones that they did where I was just kind of like, what? Okay, so within the first few stages, you have, like the ghosties and the robber, whatever, the
ogres. Are they like ogres?
Yeah,
let's say ogres.
I thought, yeah, ogres. That's fine. And then you've also got those weird red crab frog. What are those?
Crab frogs.
Crab frogs. So here's the thing about the crab frogs: is one, they shoot stuff at you, and that's a huge pain in the butt. But also too, like the first time I saw them, I'm like, oh yeah, they're like little like poison frog things, and then they turn like face down at you, and they've got these like weird elongated like sea pig like legs, and I don't know, like I saw that and I was like, what is that? and at first I was just kind of like, oh man, that was just whatever that is, it was not rendered well. And all of a sudden I was like, this is a fantasy game, it could literally be anything. And if their goal was for me to fear and respect it, I did that immediately, because it started wailing on me with its ranged attack, which I had not dealt with up until then. And I was like, yeah, this kind of worked. I'm kind of okay with it. I'm very okay with it. I am now I am now one with the crab frogs.
Yeah, this is a good point about early fantasy games because they weren't trying to replicate reality. Sometimes very much not trying to replicate reality. So
Yeah.
if it's like, oh, what's that giant blob thing that kills you? And it's like, well, it's a giant blob thing that kills you. Like that's, you now have all of the necessary information and anything additional would just be icing. Like,
Yeah.
whereas if you're trying to render something realistically, you kind of can't stop it just necessary information without people ripping on you harder. So I don't know what those things were supposed to be, but crab frogs is a perfectly satisfying answer.
Yeah, and the thing is all you need to know is that it's a powerful mob that gets you. I mean, like it's kind of like why slimes were so popular back in the day, because it's like, what is it? It's like it is a discrete colored tile. Like that's and it hurts you. It's like what is it? It's a slime. Just eat it. Like whatever.
As far as kind of how they serve gameplay, okay, so the exit door, why is it a giant white block that says exit in red letters, like would be written in a grocery store? Like, I feel bad being pissy about this, but like it bugs me, dude. It bugs me. Like, why is it like that? Because all of the other tiles are fairly thoughtful. Like there's the monster generator tile, which is like kind of looks like a thing and they all come out of it. So it's pretty obvious that like that's where they're coming from. And then like later there's like skull and crossbones on it and like a big like skull thing. So like, oh, it's like a well defended generator and I gotta like hurt it more. Right. But the exit tile is just like, it feels out of place is really what my complaint is that to have the giant word exit in English on a stark white tile when nothing else is even approaching that color feels out of place. And it just bugged me. It bugged me on every single level.
So that's interesting. I'm trying to think now though, with the resources that they had, what would be a better option that clearly denotes this is an exit?
A door?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, and I mean, don't get me wrong, like, yeah, it's definitely immersion breaking, but I'm wondering, like, how well they could render a door that it would clearly be a door,
I mean, I don't know, but
I mean, especially compared to, because what I'm thinking is that like when you've got, like you said, like they've got the little ogre spawning tiles, which are just brown, and then sometimes brown with like a skull on it or several skulls on it. And so it's like, okay, well, all of that. But then if I saw another like brown-ish tile or even like grayish tile, I would think that maybe I would assume it was like another monster generator, and I might take a few swipes at it before. And also too, like even if I saw that from, what I'm thinking too is if I saw that from like across the area, I wouldn't maybe try to get there because I would assume it was another bad thing. So I'd go everywhere else first and then be like, I don't know where I'm supposed to go.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I that is reasonable. Like part of me just wants to be like, shut up, you'd figure it out. But like it's hard to argue with the clarity of a solid white square that says exit on it in red letters. But and not only is it visually sort of out of place, which feels a little video gamey, but then when you touch it, you don't go through it like a door. You spin and it makes a very distinct like exit noise that I don't think it makes anywhere else in the game. So like even the animation that goes with it, I'm like, well, I don't know what a gaping white portal that says exit in it should behave like, but I guess this is how it behaves. It makes me spin in circles super fast. It's just, I don't know. It's fine, but it's one of the few things in the visuals that I was just like, why, when they seem to have been very thoughtful about like the way treasure looks and the way the enemies look and the way the generator looks and how they communicate to you that a generator is going to take more shots than a different generator by like layering skulls on it, like to just have a solid white square that is exactly one tile wide. I was just like, this bugs me. And it's one of those things where I was like, as I was kind of going over my notes, I was like, I'm gonna have to complain about this because like it's not just like we gotta have something to complain about. Like it genuinely irritated me, and not in a game breaking way, but in a like Oh, like that. Oh,
in a
that's
very
too
good way.
bad. Like if it wasn't for this, I might not have anything bad to say about the visuals.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, like to me, the only thing that I'm trying to think of, because I do agree that it is very video gamey, and if this showed up in like a SNES game, I'd be like, or even like a proper, Nintendo
Yeah, like a
like
first
later,
party Nintendo game.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I'd agree, if this was in like Super Mario Brothers 3, where like everything is super well thought out because it's obviously a play and they're all players in a play. And oh my god! But anyways, it's all super well thought out, right? But if all of a sudden there was just something this kind of video gamey, I'd be like, well, but yeah, I think that to me the biggest concern would be like seeing it from across the room and not immediately knowing that that's my objective. And we'll touch on this more later, is that I think it's very important that you immediately know your objective when you see it, because your health is also a timer. So it's not like exploration is weirdly incentivized in this game,
Yeah.
So if you were to because if they didn't do that, right, if exploration was incentivized, I'd be like, yeah, no, because in worst case scenario, you say like, whatever, I don't think that's where I'm supposed to go, and you go explore the rest of the place, but then that could easily cost you a huge chunk of health. And then I don't know.
So let me give you this little tidbit to chew on. In case you didn't know this may color a whole lot of your feelings, but by the time we get to mechanics, and then I will say no more about this mechanic choice. So this was an Atari game, right? That was like on an honest to God arcade cabinet. And on the arcade cabinet, this game was like every other arcade game in that it had no ending. And the objective was to just stay alive as long as possible and get a higher score. When they brought it to the Nintendo, they were like, oh, you're saving this kingdom. And also there's exactly 100 levels. And then seemingly changed nothing else about the mechanics. So we're now going to talk about that when we get to mechanics, but keep in mind that all of the mechanical decisions they made were originally with the goal of, we want more of your quarters.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of colors things like, do they want you to know exactly where the exits are and what they do and why you would want to find them? Maybe not. But anyway, do you want to move on to audio?
Yeah. Actually, as per usual, I don't have much for audio.
So you have to at least have some notes about the damage noise and the food noise, because
oh yeah. yeah. Yeah, no, because to be fair, I've got like this weird scrawled note, and I was like, what? So I was just kind of like, I hope Line starts talking, because I got to figure out what this says.
What is this?
So
Ramblings of a madman.
Yeah, and it was like weird, got health grown there, and that's like, and literally I puzzled that out like right as you're like, you got to have something to say about the health noise. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I do. Yeah, what?
Ooh, it's like, it's weirdly, I gotta say, although I think it's funny sounding, it's actually like a pretty rich, I mean, considering the hardware it's coming out of, like, it's actually a pretty rich, it really sounds like a recording of a guy. And I didn't play as the Valkyrie very much because I didn't like her mechanics, but I know she has a more kind of higher pitched sounding thing, but the three male characters all have the same like and it really sounds like a recording. It's kind of impressive, and then it's hilarious.
Yeah, no, a part of me wants to basically say the obvious, and I'm just going to.
Go ahead.
It sounds like they're because if I keep saying it sounds like they're you're gonna have to bleep me over, and you might as well use the noise that they make when they get the food. So
Proud of yourself?
yeah, I'm super proud of myself right now. But no, this is true. Yeah, no. So to be fair, too, again, like we all like to have fun here, but as hilarious, and it is, to make fun of this, and I'm not going to stop. It does actually, not only, like you said, it's a very rich sound, especially when you're used to, like in Donkey Kong, Mario's perpetual running noise, which I know you love.
I literally have a note in here that says, at least there's no walking noise.
So, in that kind of sound, it is a very like rich tone. And on top of that, in a game where the visuals need every aid that they can get, like when I walked over that, because treasure's treasure, that's obvious, right? A giant pot is a giant pot, but the food, it could be something,
Yeah,
but when you
it's a
walk over it
pile
and they
of
go,
pixels.
yeah, when you walk over it and they go, like that, you're just kind of like, well, that was probably a good thing, I think, like so. But it's clearly like a positive noise. Like the character did not get hurt,
It's
Um,
also a unique noise, and that's something that I think they did well throughout. Is only treasure makes the treasure noise, only getting hurt makes the getting hurt noise, only food makes the food noise, and there are so few sound effects that they can make them really distinct.
mhm.
And like there's in some of the later stages there's like a little portal thing that makes a little portal noise, and the exit has a very distinctive exit noise. So I don't think there's really anything else in the register of the like right, like it's kind of on its own in terms of how like low pitched it is, and you don't encounter a lot of food, so it's something happened that hasn't happened any other time. And if you notice your health meter timer thing shoot back up, then it's like, oh, that was food or health, or it was good.
Yeah, it was a good thing. A good thing happened, not a bad thing, which is, again, something that is very important to telegraph, to say like, hey, and like I said, like when you walk over treasure, well, actually, let's just say if you walked over treasure and it made the "you got hurt" noise, you would think twice about like what just happened, even though the visual is clearly a treasure chest. If you walked over it and it's like that noise, you'd be like, what? Wait, what?
Yeah, because then you're like,
then,
oh, is some treasure good but other treasure's bad? Like it'd be
right.
super confusing.
Yeah, but that's the thing though, is that so because the visuals are reinforced by the sound, it kind of lowers that kind of cognitive load on your visuals, so that way it's like, well, these two things are agreeing with one another, so I think this is good. It is good. Noted. Moving on, which is kind of nice.
Yeah. And you hear the exit noise obviously in like direct ratio to how well you're doing, right? Because if you're not doing well, you don't hear the exit noise a lot. But the treasure noise you hear kind of on and off, but then there are treasure rooms where you hear it a crap ton. And I honestly wonder if the treasure noise, it's kind of like I think it's supposed to sound like coins clinking, like you're dropping like gold into your satchel or something like that. And if you go into the treasure room where there's just treasure everywhere and you are able to run over multiple treasure chests within super quick succession, that noise actually still sounds kind of like you'd expect. Like the picking up one treasure sounds like I drop 3 coins into my satchel, but if you run over 3 treasure spots, it sounds like you dropped 9 coins, because it actually loops really well. And it's possible that it's an accident, but I don't think it is. Like I really think they built the treasure rooms and then kind of were like, okay, we need to make sure that the noise that it makes as you run around this treasure room, and there's no other sound effect other than you picking up treasure, because the treasure rooms have no monsters. So there's just music and treasure noise, and that needs to not make you want to kill yourself. It should feel good. You should be like excited that you're like getting all this treasure, and they friggin' nailed it. Like it actually is like really good, especially considering the hardware, the time, and that when that noise was originally designed, the audience they were probably expecting was in an arcade, like a noisy, all kinds of crap going on around you arcade. So it's like, for every like, at least you get like a nice treasure noise and a treasure room. Like, it's give and take.
Well, and one of the other things that it does is like that we've discussed before, is that the food noise, which you don't get a whole lot of, which I wish I'd gotten to hear more of it. The getting hurt noise, the hurting things noise, all of them, none of them were super annoying, which is good because you hear them a lot, And so unlike, other noises where we've just like Mario's running noise and Donkey Kong, or the swimming noise that occurs in every water level ever that you have to make 1,000,000 times, it wasn't noises that you were going to hear a million times were not grating, which is, nice. And as we've seen, not always true or the case,
Yeah. And with the music, the same kind of phenomenon is happening, but unfortunately, sound effects are held to a different standard than music, which is the music is really good. They're catchy little tunes, and more importantly, they seem to have been very thoughtful about making the music not collide with the register that the sound effects are in. Because if there was any ducking where like it had to drop out the music to make a sound effect happen, it's either incredibly minor or maybe just not existent.
I actually had a note that I did not notice that at all.
Yes, I did not notice it at all. And to be fair, like I got nowhere close to the end of the game, but
yeah, no, me either.
Yeah, at no point was I like, oh, when I'm fighting this monster, I can't hear the damn music. The flip side of that is there's only like 3 melodies, and this game has literally 100 levels. So you just hear those 3 melodies on repeat forever.
Yeah. I thought it was particularly weird though, the one song that they put later on that was the David Pumpkin song,
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's its own thing.
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing though with it, they did get the skeletons in because they are a part of it,
How is that becoming a thing? Anyway, but yeah, that was, and I know I've made this specific complaint before. Like the music was good. I wish there was more of it, but music is hard because it takes up a lot of space on a tiny little cartridge, and in a game with 100 literally like 100 levels, you can't write 100 individual pieces of music. And then it's like, well, we've established that my proposal is sound in principle, and now we're just haggling over price. So at some point, one of the composers was like, how few songs could we have? Could we have 10? How about 5? What if there were only 2? It's like, and they negotiated it down so that 1, they didn't have to compose more music than they had to. 2, it's an arcade game, so you're not there for the music. And 3, they were never going to get anywhere close to having a unique song for each level. So it's like, do we want to have theme music? Like if the background's green, we'll play the green theme. If the background's red, we'll play the red theme. And it's like, no, we're not going to do that. So you just end up negotiating down and down and down until I think I don't think I'm exaggerating if I say there are 5 pieces of music or less. And then you just hear them on repeat ad infinitum.
Right. And I mean, to be fair too, they were probably just kind of like, well, even let's just say that there's 5, right? So it's like, well, it's going to repeat every 5 levels. And I think most people's sanity is going to give out after 15. So, it's not going to be super repetitive. And unless you have anything else on music, I think that very nicely brings us into gameplay, which is this game's hard, dude.
It is hard, but we need to make sure we specifically talk about the controls because we often, kind of controls and mechanics sort of go in together. And every once in a while we talk about the controls when they're exceptionally good, but usually it's when they're exceptionally bad. And these controls are not exceptionally bad, but they are exceptionally dated. The fact that like if you like attack while you're walking, everything's fine, but if you try and turn while you're walking, the game engine literally has no idea how to deal with that, and you just come to a stop. Like I get it. I totally get it that you have to lift your finger off one arrow and press a different arrow, and you can't really roll because when you do the roll, there's like a frame or more where you're like frozen in time, and that makes the game harder. I get all that, but that is the kind of thing that has aged not at all. Like that sort of limitation was not because anyone thought it was a good idea. It was entirely a limitation of the hardware at the time, and it has not aged well, and it's brutal, and I hate it. And I hate it. Like I hate it so much. Like there were so many times where I was like, well, I just lost 500 health because I was stupidly trying to, go diagonal or do something that looked like I should have been able to do it in this area, but I couldn't. And it's like, if I was over there, I could have gone diagonal, but over here it's, just up or left. And it's, oh God, it drove me nuts. Like so many deaths were attributed to super dated controls that I'm sure through exposure I would have re-internalized, but I don't want to because they're terrible.
Yeah. It's dumb. I don't like it. Yeah, I think like to me, it's similar, and this is more so into gameplay than the controls. Is the fact that, and this is not the only game to do this by any means, and it's very common in older games. But I don't know why. Like in this one, it particularly called out to me, which was you can only attack on the cardinal directions in like 45 degrees.
Mhm.
And I think that with the like slightly clunky controls that you were talking about, is there were so many times where I would be firing and be like off by like a hair
Yeah.
from my target, and so then I'd have to like completely readjust, and that like walking, one half pixel down, a half pixel over, and then re-angling and firing. And it was like, well, I am now cut to ribbons and bleeding on the floor because I was just off by a hair's breadth. And in a game that is punishing like this one is, that would cause a much closer to a rage quit moment, because I'd be like, well, I was doing fine until I made this mistake that I don't really feel was like due to poor planning or poor execution. It's just kind of a limitation of the medium, and now I am screwed to the point where I don't think like I'm not going to be able to progress any further. Like I just think that's game, Hendrix.
Yeah. And to put that in perspective, I think if you played a lot of old games, you would deeply internalize the grid system, and you would be like, I know exactly where the grid is because I've just memorized it, and it's in my muscle memory, just like you would get muscle memory for any modern game or any mid, life game. I have no idea what the hell you would call games from like the PS1, GameCube, or PS1, PS2, GameCube era, and I just called them midlife, and that feels super
games.
Wrong. What?
Millennial games?
Yeah.
Millennial games?
Yeah, okay.
I just made that up, but I hope it becomes a thing.
Yeah, I'm not happy with any of this. But I feel like you would start to, internalize the grid, and then you would know, like, you'd be better at saying, like, if I fire at this angle, I will hit that enemy, or I won't, right? Which is fine. The problem is that is it's an example of a thing that aged really poorly, because you're used to being able to make super fine adjustments where you don't only shoot at, like 12 and 3 and 6 and 9, you can also shoot at like quarter after 12, right? And like, or 12:01 or 12:01 in 15 seconds, and having like that hyper, fine grained control. And then games even having engines to adjust where it's like, well, you were off by a tiny bit, but we're going to like Roadrunner physics that into hitting them, and that kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas games of this era just didn't make some of those design decisions, and in a lot of cases couldn't make some of those design decisions, but it does age the game in a way that makes it a little bit less fun. And I tell you all that to tell you this. I watched a speed run of this game because I was just kind of curious, and because your health is also on a timer, which we'll jump into in a second, the only way to speed run this game is to not fight, because this game has two really fascinating mechanics. One is your health is also the timer that's just constantly counting down. And also, if you physically collide with an enemy, you lose health, but they disappear. So,
I think I went so far out of my... Now that you mention it, yes, that is true, but I just, I don't think I actually registered it, because first of all, I was like attacking always, because there's no real penalty for doing that. So I think I just assumed that it was like my sword that hit them, but now that I'm thinking about it, when they flank me too, they would also disappear. I just was swinging wild, so I didn't really think about it.
Yeah, so you can definitely be mobbed to death. And it's not every enemy. Like some of the more powerful enemies, I don't think you can just face plant into them to their demise, because they will give you more damage than face planting apparently does. But you can kill certain enemies, especially like the ghosts, by just plowing into them. And when you watch someone do a speed run, it's almost like they don't even have a weapon, because since delaying to engage in combat makes you lose life, even if you are winning and not getting hit, the fact that time is passing is making you essentially take damage. All the speed runs are even more, I know they're trying to finish the game quickly, but like they're even more disincentivized to engage in combat, because it's like not only would that waste time, but it will also weaken me. Whereas if I just plow through this field of ghosts because the exit is on the other side of that field, that is actually a way to retain more health than if I fought them all off, because I would be dying while I'm fighting. Like it's an interesting kind of choice. And so knowing that this used to be a quarter munching arcade game makes the timer thing make a lot more sense. But it's I can't say it's a bad design choice, but it's an interesting one. Like that your health and timer are just one number.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. And I do want to briefly touch on the beautiful metaphor that is, which is that like the minute you are born into this world, you begin to die. And, you can try to do different interventions to stave off death. But not only does interacting with things that are harmful to you hurt you, but by sheer virtue of drawing breath, you inch ever closer to your own demise is pretty grim.
So can I have a vulnerable moment with you here? So
sure.
So when I was thinking about this mechanic, I was like, oh man, it's like you're in this like dungeon, and this world is like full of monsters, and just being there is like sucking the life out of you, but like you're doing the right thing. And I was like, that's kind of a cool mechanic. Like you're in like the dark world where the monsters are, and just being there kind of kills you. But no, making it like a grand, like life is hard and this kind of life is much harder on you. That is the way more obvious and beautiful metaphor. And like, I kind of feel stupid for not going there. Like, it's like this, as soon as you started to say that, I was just like, God damn it. Like, yeah, no, yes, I totally came to that on my own.
Of course. Well, I mean, to be fair, you went to more of like the darkest dungeon place where, like just being in the dungeon stresses you out.
Yeah, but as if being in your house comfortable, you're not like aging and dying. Like
it was like from Futurama. It's like, no, I'm obviously human. I also age. See? But yes, yeah. So so that metaphor aside, I did think it was a very interesting design choice. I again, good or bad, I didn't like it. I didn't. But I mean, at the same point in time, I didn't like it just because my skill level is not where it used to be, or needs to be, obviously, to play this game. But I thought I did kind of like the idea that, like you said, it's a trade-off, right? So you can sit there. For example, there would be times when I would be just mobbed by mobs, and so I'd just be swinging wild and just firing my axe at or sword or staff or bow or whatever, and everything, right? Just like laying waste to everything. I'm like, yeah, and I felt like Rambo on top of the mound, just like killing everything. I'm like, I'm still losing though, and actually that could be another, kind of like a great like management tool where it's just kind of like, oh yeah, you can sit there and hemorrhage time at a problem and be solving that problem, but at the same point in time, if you're not moving towards your greater goal, then you are still losing.
It's the Band-Aid solution of killing these monsters and maybe even destroying that monster generator. But if you don't stop the evil wizard guy, I can't remember what his name is. It's something with an R. If you
Gandalf.
No, is this the world something with an R? Yeah, if you don't stop Gandalf, then
I believe his name is Gandalf Calrissian, and you have to return the one true ring to the Battlestar Galactica, right?
Yeah, no, that all sounds right. So if you don't stop Gandalf, you die, right? Like if you have a paper cut that you are diligently applying Neosporin to while your leg has been amputated but not like closed up, then that problem will be the one that kills you, not the unattended to paper cut. And I think like there is definitely an element of that, but they introduced that element at the NES version, because the Atari one is definitely the nihilist of like everybody dies. Like no matter how successful of a warrior you are, no matter how much food you eat, like everybody dies. But in the NES version, and I think some of the subsequent re-releases like on PC, there is a story, there is an objective, and now it becomes resource management with a destination, because resource management where you are trying to live the longest possible life is an incredibly different proposition, because in a video game, if you beat the last boss with 1 HP, you beat the game. In a what do you call it, like a sustenance model, where you're just trying to beat the clock, then 1 HP is just the last second before 0 HP, which is when you die, right? So there's not just different goals, but the entire way you deal with all of the mechanics that support those goals is entirely kind of tossed on its head. And I prefer a story-driven game. Like I think you do too, but I don't know if some of these mechanics are ideal for a story-based game.
No, I think it's way more steeped in nihilism is the better way to go. And I think that you kind of you mentioned something like this before. I don't know if it was on the podcast or if it was just when we were chatting, but basically, like there's I think it was called like the tourist effect or something like that, when people will go to a impoverished country and for like a month or two and
poverty tourism.
Poverty tourism, right? And so it's just kind of like, oh well, now I know what it's like to really be in that situation. It's like you don't, because you knew it was going to end. Like that in and of itself completely reframes the entire situation. And so similarly with this game, where it's just kind of like knowing that the game has an end completely reframes the way that you attack it. Because I'll tell you what, man, I the phrase Pyrrhic victory is thrown around all too much these days. But I can't tell you how many battles that I won, but I, like walked away from it being like, probably wasn't the hill to die on, Yeah. But yeah, so it's definitely, I will give the game this. It is a mechanic that you don't see regularly, and I do think that they executed on it well. I'm still out on whether or not I like it as a mechanic, but it is definitely a unique one, to be sure.
Well, and there's some lipstick you could put on it that I think might change the way the player feels about it. Because if you say, oh, this is your health, and the reason it's always degrading is because being in the dark world sucks the life out of you. So you need to be there as little as possible, but you have a job to do, right? Like that might make a person feel different. And then on the flip side, you might say something like, oh, you don't have health. You're an invincible super warrior. But whenever any of the monsters touch you, it saps away the amount of time you can be in the dark world. So you have to pick up these magic orbs that give you more time in the dark world, right? Like it's literally the exact same mechanic, but it's just presented in a different way. And you could mix up the visuals and say like, oh, you're in a pinball game, and every time you touch this thing, you get more uses of the flippers, right? Like it's the same kind of idea. I just think it's interesting in a game that is obviously derived from fantasy and is obviously derived from tabletop and video game RPGs, to tie your health directly to the timer. But
sorry.
No, you interrupt, sir. You do it.
Sorry. No, I just had an exciting thought. It's like, so it's health. It's obviously health.
Yes, it's health. It's little hearts, yeah.
But
hearts and food, yeah.
But what if it was sanity, right?
So now it is Darkest Dungeon.
Now it is Darkest Dungeon. But no. Because not only like so the idea is that you're slowly going mad as you're going through this dark dungeon, right? And interacting with fiends, continues to tax your sanity. And food gives you sanity because it just gives you that respite, right?
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, you could really drive a stake into that heart metaphor and be like, well, it is literally like your ability to take heart. Like yes. It's your willpower to keep it together in this horrible situation.
Yeah. Sorry, I just that just hit me where what made me so excited was the fact it's like food could restore sanity. It doesn't necessarily have to be health. Like you could just eat and it makes you feel better.
Absolutely. And the last thing I was going to say about it is just that it's regardless of the theming around it, regardless of whether or not it is necessarily a good or bad mechanic, something it definitely has going for it is that it is way, way simpler than having to manage more things. Because if you also had to manage a timer in addition to health, it's like, well, now what am I going to prioritize? Am I looking for things that restore health because I suck at fighting? Or am I looking for things that restore time because I want to explore more? And it's just like, no, there's just one. There's one big number, and that number is constantly counting down, and these things make it count down faster, and these things restore some of it. Like, and that's it, there's something to be said for, like I said, theming aside, the simplicity of here is the resource you have to manage. It is the one true resource because it is the only resource. You have unlimited of whatever your weapon is. You do have or it's magic. You do have area effect weapons, but whatever.
It is the resource that is the alpha and the omega at the beginning and the end. All of those who drink from the water of life can drink freely from it.
That's right.
Yes.
The hearts and the food.
So one thing that this is like a throwaway kind of just thing that I noticed, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I don't know why I decided to go delve deep on this. Is so each of the characters have like stats, and that's typical RPG fare.
And they do seem to actually matter.
No, they do. Like the warrior is more sluggish, like because he doesn't move as far. He takes, but he deals damage and he deals damage faster and takes less damage than like the wizard. All of that's true. Here's the interesting thing though, is that the mage and the warrior's abilities sum to 12. The Valkyrie and the archer sum to 13. So you actually get an additional ability point if you're playing the Valkyrie or the archer.
Okay. So I want you to explain to me why you noticed that. Because that's obviously, I mean, math is math, right? Like you can't unarithmetic it, but that makes me wonder if that was an intentional choice to give them a higher stat total, or if it was an artifact of them playtesting and maybe they were like, well, if we knock their whatever stat down by one more, it kind of sucks too much. And so to make those two characters balanced in the way they wanted them to be balanced, they end up having a higher total. Like, it could just be an accident, but I don't think it is. I think it happened through some organic design process. But how did you notice that? Why did you notice that?
Well, because so I was trying to pick what character I wanted to play as, right? And so I was just kind of like, okay, well, this character's got, a little bit more health or defense. This one has like more attack and all this sort of stuff. And then I don't know why I was swapping between two of them, and then just something in my brain called out and said like, hey, those numbers don't jive, man. And so all right, so this is definitely a tangent. But I don't know how, I don't know how most people do math. But I know that the way I do it is like when I look at numbers, it like they fit together. It's weird. Like, I don't know how to tell you. So like,
I kind of was hoping you were just going to stop it when I look at numbers.
So like, for example, like 7 and 3 add to 10, right? So to me,
wait, yes, that's correct.
Thank you. No, thank you for literally checking my math on that one. But so to me, like the 3 sits on top of the 7, and those two numbers fit together, and that makes a 10.
Oh,
like,
yeah. I can't speak for the rest of humanity. I don't tend to think of numbers that way, but I think a lot of people think of if they can make a nicer set or a nicer round number, I think people jump to that because humans we're good pattern matchers.
Right. And so basically when I was swapping between the Valkyrie and the warrior back and forth, right, is I just saw like the warrior, I just saw like, okay, this set makes a 10 and then this is 12, right? And I swapped back to the Valkyrie and it just didn't jive like that, which made me actually like write it down. And I was like, wait, that sums to 13. And then I went down the rabbit hole. But yeah, and if I had to guess, I would guess that movement is not weighted as heavily,
Mm.
or that there's a stat that where they say like, okay, well, attack, defense, and this one other stat, like they always jive, and then the movement one, like it takes more movement in order to be considered to be a stat point because they didn't feel that it play tested as well or what have you. But
Yeah.
But technically, the Valkyrie and the Archer are slightly more powerful.
So this raises a question that when we play games like this, I notice we sometimes completely ignore. Who was your primary play? Because it sounded like you tried everybody, but who was your go-to?
The Valkyrie.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Explain yourself, because I did not care for the way she handled.
She's faster. So like I played mostly the Valkyrie and the Warrior. I think I touched the other two, and I was just kind of like, fine. But yeah, no, I liked the I like the fact that because like the Warrior just felt really sluggish to me. But
Really
the fact that
sluggish.
the fact that she could just jam around that fast, I think, like you said, like even with the speedrunners, like they don't engage. I kind of realized that I could get around situations easier.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my main play. How about you?
The Robin Hood. Because
yeah.
he's the fastest, and I frequently found myself in situations where I was like, gotta run, gotta go fast. Yes, lots of, which I mean probably says something about the way I play the game, right? Because if I was awesome at the combat mechanic, then maybe I would lean toward like the Warrior. But no, I absolutely, as soon as, because like I said, I don't have super clear memories of playing this as a kid, but I have crystal clear memories of being Robin Hood. So like, the second we decided we were going to play this game, I was like, I'm going to play as the Archer. I will try everybody else because I'm going to be thorough, but I am positive. And like the second I started playing as the Warrior, I literally just marched him to his death. Like once I saw how slowly he moved, I was just like, you are going to die in glorious combat, my friend, because I cannot live in this life a second longer than I have to.
Yeah, I think that for me, the only reason why I didn't go for the Archer was just, and to be fair, I'm not to be emulated. I did not get far in this game, but it was just, I was just like, oh, because I think that mostly I was like, I normally, okay, so peek behind the curtain. You know this. Not all of our listeners do. I hate archers.
You super hate archer. I wondered if you were going to bring that up. Yes.
I super hate archers. Like, and I remember when you found out about this, because I think I was playing like some Lord of the Rings game or something like that.
Oh, yeah. That poor guy.
Yeah, and they force you to have an archer, and I was like, oh, this guy. And so and then I just, because we were both playing different video games, you'd occasionally hear me from the pink alley like, oh, good, the archer leveled up. Guess he can shoot more of nothing. And then you like turn to me, you're like, why do you hate the archers so much? I'm like, because they're cowards. So I really hope Megan doesn't listen to this one. For the record, Legolas is the clear exception to this.
Yes.
I have nothing bad to say about Legolas. He is a god amongst men, and amongst gods, he is king. But anyways, so the Valkyrie was between the Valkyrie and the Warrior. Like the Valkyrie is definitely the go-to because the Warrior is just unbearably slow.
No, the Warrior is unbearably slow, which I think for a patient player might be a tolerable thing. The Wizard really felt like if there was a mechanic that you could capitalize on for the right playstyle with the Wizard, I do not know what it is. He's not so fast that it's like, oh, well, obviously. He doesn't do so much damage that it's like, oh, well, obviously. And everyone has a ranged attack. So
right.
The only thing I can come up with, because I played the Wizard and he dies like just a strong breeze knocks him over. So the only thing I can come up with, and I'm guessing here, I don't actually know if this is true, is maybe when he collects magic drops, he gets more, or when he uses magic, it drains less of his magic, because I don't, he's weaker than the other fighters. He's not the fastest and he takes the most damage. I don't know what unless the magic just does so much more damage when he uses it. What is his redeeming quality?
He's got a beard.
He does have a beard. Yes,
it's a nice beard. It's pretty cool. Yeah, no, I didn't really understand the Wizard either. So again, between Wizard, warrior and Valkyrie because I'm definitely not playing the archer. Valkyrie was my go-to. One other thing that I mean, I've got a couple of other things I want to talk about, but I thought that it was an interesting choice that you fire faster. You know what I'm saying? Like the closer things are to you, you know, like that you fire, like basically there can be like one unit of projectile on the screen at a time, and thus you fire way faster when they're closer to you.
Yes, which I have a gut feeling is an artifact of the computers and not an intentional design choice where they were like, there will only be one projectile for these design reasons. It really feels like there can be only one projectile. So the sooner that one projectile is no longer being computed, the faster we can send out another one. So when you're standing right next to a monster or a monster generator or a wall, you can fire like 100 times a second. Like it's so fast. It's so fast.
Yeah. To be fair, I think that if they really felt that was bad, they probably could have truncated it on the back end and been like, you can fire like at most one projectile and then at most one projectile and then like also on the other end like curtailed it on the back end. But I did think that the fact that they left the fact that, you know, when you are being overrun, you can fire like gangbusters, but then like if you're trying to snipe at people, that's kind of more of a chore. So yeah, I thought that was kind of choice or not. I thought it was an interesting mechanic in that sense because I thought it was kind of well balanced, you know, because the more you were to being overwhelmed, the more you could deal with that, which was kind of nice.
Yeah, and I think I really feel just because of how rapidly you fire when stuff is right on top of you, it's like this feels like a clock speed issue. But but the fact that it then works within the design of the game, and because to your point about as you're being overwhelmed, it is not immediately obvious to a new player that monsters never stop coming because those little generators never stop generating monsters. So you now have to ask yourself, do I want to get to the exit as quickly as possible? Do I want to destroy this monster generator and explore this level to look for stuff? Like, what am I optimizing for? What do I care about? What do I want to get out of this gameplay experience? Am I mad at this mob and I just want to go into their house and burn it down? Like there's kind of conflicting player incentives, and because the game incentives are mixed, right? Like part of you is just trying to live longer, and then there is sort of a story in the NES version. So it's like the game kind of has its ideas about what it wants me to do, but I also have a lot of freedom to decide what I want to do. It fits really well with that. Like the mechanic, intentional or not, fits really, really well with the realities of the technology, but also with the realities of the game design, the intentional game design.
Agreed. I have one other mechanical thing, and then I'm good.
Tapped.
And this is just something that we've seen it in other games, but God, it just drives me off the wall. Which is, as we were just discussing, know the limitations of the hardware that you're working on, and don't put so many mobs on the screen that the entire game comes to a grinding halt. There was at least half a dozen times where I'd just be like, all right, well, I'm just going to go from point A to point. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, and I was just like, there just didn't need to be this many mobs on the screen. I don't know how you would have fixed it, but you needed to fix it.
Yeah.
You know?
And that is one of those things that I can't say for sure, but it may have been less of an egregious problem on a more powerful arcade cabinet. I suspect it was still a problem because arcade cabinets were more powerful, but they weren't like 100 times more powerful. I suspect it still would have happened eventually, but it felt like you only had to be distracted by a squirrel for a couple seconds before, because a lot of the times the monster generators are on the other side of a wall, but the monsters are stupid and have no pathfinding. So they come straight towards you, which means they will just pile up on the other side of a wall until the room they're in is literally completely full. and it's kind of gross and weird, like visually, but yeah. So I mean, if you are distracted for even just a couple of seconds, several monster generators will just puke monsters into the room to where it's like 2 or 3 frames per second, like in degradation. Like it's really bad.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of games that we have played have done it. This one, I think, has been the worst so far because most of the times when games do it, it's been stuff like bullet hell games, where I'm like, oh, thank God, like everything's slowed down a little bit so I can kind of dodge around. Or that one scene in Chrono Trigger where all of the people are dancing, like what?
Yeah, that is, and the fact that it's like the end of the game where it's like, and the game
what was
just
that about?
just crashes. The frame rate just absolutely crashes. It's really a bummer.
Yeah, it was just such a weird choice where it's just such an immaculate game. They're like, what we're going to do at the very end, that last sweet taste we want to leave in your mouth is the frame rate crash into hell for no good reason.
Yeah, dude, I've been playing that game for 20 years and that still bugs me. Like it bugged me when I was 10 and it bugs me in my 30s.
Yep. But like on your deathbed, it's going to be like, pop. What do you remember most in life? Oh, I just really hated the end to Chrono Trigger.
I wish I'd spent less time at the office. I wish I had spent more time outdoors. And also, what was up with the frame rate at the end of Chrono Trigger? He died as he lived, hating the end of Chrono Trigger. No, and at least not all of the endings, because that game has like 47 endings. So at least not all of the endings make you go into the Millennium Fair. The one other thing I want to make sure we talk about with mechanics, and not because there's a ton to say, but just because it's an important thing to mention. This game has no power-ups to speak of. It has no items you acquire, right? Like you don't get any stronger. You can just recover health by eating food, and then you march ever onward, right? And if it's the arcade version, you march until you die. If it's the NES version, you eventually try and beat the game. But there are two things happening in the NES version that super matter. One is that there's passwords, which I thought was interesting because they do not make it obvious how to get to the password screen. You just have to know the button combination on the start screen to get to the password screen. The other thing is, and I don't think either of us experienced this personally, I had to observe this through other more skilled players. Did you know that the map it shows you in between levels is an actual map that you need to actually care about, because later levels have multiple exits, and depending on the exit you take, you go to a different room? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, obviously.
Yeah. So
Yes.
here's the thing.
No.
This game has literally like 100 levels or 100 screens, I guess. And you don't have to go through all of them because, one, there are passwords, and two, depending on which exit you take from a level, you might jump like 3 or 4 levels ahead. And then you might take an exit that sends you like back a couple levels because you went the wrong way. And like, it's not brutal. Like it's not super easy to get like wildly lost. Most exits make you progress forward. In fact, I think almost all of them make you progress forward. So it's not like you're in a hedge maze. But the thing is, in a world where there is an end goal, knowing that matters a lot because you're actually trying to get somewhere. In a world where you're just trying to live and get the highest possible score, it matters almost not at all. Like you might want to get to the treasure rooms to boost your score, and if you miss a treasure room, you might be pissy about it, but generally you're just trying not to die.
Right. Yeah, no, that's like I said, like I did not get as far as I'd like to have in this game just because I just God, it's just it's punishing. And like I was like, yeah, I played all the characters, and I literally I think got to the same level plus or minus 1 level every time. And I'm like not getting any better. Yeah. So but yeah, no, that is very interesting. It's I mean, to be honest, like you said, is that probably when it was an arcade cabinet, it didn't matter because you were just going for the high score, and then they just ported it and then decided to just start doing that sweet cocaine. I got the cocaine.
This feels, well, I mean, all those quarters. I mean, I don't know how drug dealers feel about taking quarters in turn for drugs, but anyway,
It's legal tender.
Yeah, it totally is. I mean, I don't know. It's a lot of quarters. I'm just wondering, like, is this a thing that, because I don't know how they would handle this in the arcade, but is this a thing that, like, if I had the original instruction manual, it would say, like, how the map works? Because, and like how to get to the password screen? Because the game does not tell you those things. It does not, it literally does not surface in any way how you get to the password screen that I saw. And it doesn't tell you how the map works. So, yeah, you could and maybe even should discern through gameplay, like, oh, when I went through this exit, I actually there were 2 exits in this room, and I noticed that going to this exit actually took me to a different room, right? Like, you probably should notice that through gameplay, but I mean, I didn't. Like, and I'm not saying, like, because I didn't notice it's bad design. I'm saying I didn't notice, and I'm not sure how much playing I would have had to have done to notice. Certainly more than I did, which was not an insubstantial amount. I mean, I got in, my full commitment to Gauntlet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not sure. Again, I just think that they just kind of ported it over and then just went to lunch. It's like, done. Because, like you said, like in the arcade cabinet, there definitely weren't passwords, or it would be my guess. And again, like you said, it doesn't matter whether you're going forwards or backwards. In fact, in the arcade version, it might actually be better to go back because then theoretically the difficulty's decreasing.
Yeah, and if maybe you can hit treasure rooms multiple times if you're able to backtrack. I don't know how robust your ability to traverse the map is, because that's so laughably outside my skill level. It's like, I'm sure someone has done this math and it's on GameFAQs, but I was certainly not going to discern this knowledge myself.
Certainly not. But with all that said, does it hold up?
So for me, no. It doesn't hold up because it's way too damn hard, and I have very specific nostalgia goggles for this game. And if you have like really strong nostalgia goggles, I think you would enjoy playing this. Handing this to someone now, I think they wouldn't enjoy it. Fortunately,
you could do it to somebody you don't like.
Well, yeah. Fortunately, there's like 8 games in this series, several of which are very modern. So if you like the idea of this kind of game, then you could play like a more modern, hopefully more polished version. And on that point, I kind of want to stress, even though I didn't super love playing this, and even though I wouldn't fall all over myself to recommend this to a friend, I kind of do admire like the long view of game design that these designers obviously had. This is a ridiculously sprawling world where every single screen this is not a roguelike. Like, each of the screens is designed by hand to look and feel a specific way, and there are probably intentional optimal routes through each level, but then there's multiple alternative routes through most of the levels. The sound effects not interfering with the music shows that like they were thinking about like rich sound effects and rich music. The visuals being varied in the way they were varied, where it's like, oh, we have these different monsters and it needs to be obvious that they do different things, so we're going to make sure they look different, and having like rich color palettes across different level designs so that it doesn't feel too samey across 100 freaking levels is like, you could tell they had tremendously grand ambitions about where action RPGs would eventually be, and were just limited by the game's literacy and design options, or the design literacy of the time, and then obviously by the hardware. But there's a lot of really smart, forward-looking things happening in this game, despite the fact that I have no interest in playing it again.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, does it hold up? Yes, I think, for me at least, I think that it does, in the way that I don't know, like did I enjoy playing this? No. I definitely think that I'd recommend it to people. Anybody who's like, I really, really just want a challenge. It's like you want a game that's based on challenge, that is holy crap hard. Play this game. I would also recommend it to anybody, because you hear this happen from time to time. and and it just I think it's just it frustrates me because I think it's antithetical to making good games where it's just like, oh, they just don't make hard games like they used to, like I miss hard games. It's like, no, you don't. you really don't. Like, you're not so for somebody's like, oh yeah, like oh man, these games are too easy. It's like, oh, do you want a hard game? Because I've got one that's got 100 levels for you. It's Gauntlet. Just play that. But yeah, man, I don't know. So with that in mind, I'd say yes. But honestly, I if somebody said to me like like, hey, do you want to sit down and play this game? I'd be like, dude, you can throw that Gauntlet, but I'm not going to pick it up.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less